Good morning. My name is Jamie Johnston. I am the creator and the host of the Sustainability Channel. And if anybody's listening, I'm awfully glad you're here. Regrettably, I'm probably going to shut this down in early October because I never really got it up on its sticks to where it could move. And I regret that. There was just so much to learn. And I was recovering from a shock that I received in the spring, and but that's all okay because the sustainability channel is an idea whose time has come. I thought more people would be interested in sustainability, but I see the world in an entirely different way than most. Uh, Let me, if you happen to be a person who is dropping out or who has dropped out or who is finding life unfulfilling and kind of meaningless, if you're wondering, wait a second, there is so much inequity in our world. Can't we have some equity? And I'm completely down with that. I get that part. But I was born in 1953, so that's almost 70 years ago. Just to put that in reference, the Queen Elizabeth, uh, she was in what's called the interregnum period. Her father died in 52, and she was coronated on uh, sometime in June 1953. And of course, I was born in 1953 in Queen Charlotte's Hospital in London. So that's 70 years that has passed since then. And I want to just, for historical purposes, tell you a little bit about what the world was like when I dropped into it. I was born in London, and then my mother and father elected to get a divorce because of changes in job status for my father. They were both top-notch journalists, and they expected to be able to kind of write their own ticket and go to major European capitals. And I was born, and John was sent to chase wars in the Middle East. So my mother and I returned to Aspen, Colorado, of all places. And Aspen wasn't the Aspen that you know today. Aspen was a town that had been reborn in the late 40s because there were a lot of concerned people uh, who took their summers elsewhere, from the East Coast intellectuals, Midwest intellectuals, say from Chicago, University of Indiana. Uh, and so in 1949, Aspen held the Goethe Bicentennial celebration, which was quite something, the 200th anniversary, I believe, of his birth. And normally that's held in Germany, but the the game at that point, or the requirement, was that Germany and Japan be burnished, that they be uh, polished up and introduced to the world as not the enemy, because humans have a tendency to stick on their enemies for a long time. This this resulted this Aspen organization turned into a music festival and to the Aspen Institute for Humanistic Studies. And the founders of the institute were very well connected, uh, especially to people in the UN, because the UN, despite what the kind of Texas oil conservative fueled conservative thinking, was an effort to say We cannot let this happen again. We cannot let 100 million people get killed in a war that was a crime against humanity and against the people of the world. I'll argue, and I think many people are coming to the conclusion, actually, that including the Russians, that war is a repudiated mechanism for solving problems. Nobody wants to send their sons to war. There's something called the Pax Materna, which was written by a member of an outfit called Another Mother for Peace. It started in the early 60s by women. I had hoped that women would be interested in coming together and leading as a known force for good throughout the world. And I believe there are good arguments, even facts, scientific facts, that have occurred that would support the argument that it is now a woman's world. Now, what would a woman's world be as opposed to a man's world? Well, I'll tell you a story. My grandmother tells a story of Bill and my mother, who were in their, before they were 13 or 14, so they were kids, and they were growing up in what was once the West Tech or the Oklahoma Dust Bowl. Somehow the Indians got it as a reservation, and my grandfather was drilling for oil, and so in those days you stayed on site and you drilled, you looked for the stuff. Granddaddy said it was very exciting when oil shot up out of the ground and you had found something like that. So it's a big thrill. But boys and girls. So my mother walked into the kitchen, and these are modest places. Believe me, this is just in the Depression. And she says, "I hate Bill." My grandmother says, "Well, you don't hate anybody." She was big on that. You don't hate anybody. I wish everybody in the world would kind of get on that line of thinking, don't you? You don't hate anybody. It's stupid. We're all in the same race. But in any case, so Graham, ever the investigator, said, "Oh, and why do you hate Bill? Why do you think you hate Bill?" "Because he's a cheater." So my grandma said, "Well, how did he cheat you?" He said that if I promised to go rabbit hunting with him this morning, he'd play paper dolls with me this afternoon. And he won't play paper dolls. And my grandma called William Russell Johnston over and inquired, "Did you agree to play paper dolls in exchange for, going rabbit hunting?" "Yes." "Well," so they went and played paper dolls for not very long. So there's a difference between boys and girls. I just want you to know that. Boys traditionally like things that go bang. Now, go figure why. It's part nature, it's part nurture. Men have been the breadwinners. They were the ones who went out into the frontier. They were the scouts. You read of some female scouts, Sacagawea being one, every bit equal to a man. But the social connotations of the two genders are different. And I will suggest to you that I won't suggest, well, I don't know how I say this. In 2021, we moved the from the purely hydrocarbon era to a blended solar hydrocarbon era. And now hydrocarbons contribute the lion's share of power to our world, 80%. So let's just think about hydrocarbons and solar, and we'll compare them. And I'm going to compare them in ways that you probably have never thought about. Hydrocarbons are the result of sunshine, often because they are the result of plant and animal matter that has been subjected to heat, time, and pressure. I don't know how much pressure they have been subjected to, nor the exact amount of heat, but they have been. It takes 100 million to 300 million years to make various and assorted hydrocarbons. Solar, on the other side, we can now convert to energy, electricity rather, immediately upon its arrival at the planet's surface, where you are. That the sun's ray takes 8 minutes and 40 seconds to get to you and me. This presents a massive change. And it goes back to the difference between boys and girls. And that's why I'm saying we have entered a solar hydrocarbon era. And as a result, it is now a woman's world. And people ask me, they're like, okay, so SHE, I get it, it's a cute little acronym, but you could do other things with the combination of words. What's the big deal? And the big deal is simply this. In a man's world, scarcity is part of manliness. To attempt the most scarce achievement, to go the fastest, jump the highest, score the most points, make the most money. Those are all male-oriented achievements, because in a world where there is scarcity, finding the ultimate prize is the most valued skill. Now, we've got a world in which the energy that allows us to drive our lifestyles so we can live the way we want to live is available here and now, at the moment, right now. We can take sunshine and convert it to electricity, and we can power a great deal, not every one of the machines and devices that power our world, because some of them take more. Some of them take energy that only nuclear or hydrocarbons can provide. But solar can provide a lot. It'll open up an entirely new field of investigation because of just its nature of being low voltage and DC. And I'm not enough of a scholar or a trained engineer to be able to describe the fine points of DC, but it provides a vast new frontier in which we can experiment. What's that have to do with girls and boys? Okay, I identified the boy portion of history as the hydrocarbon era, the era in which there was not enough to go around, and a guy who got the most, he who dies with the most toys wins. That was somehow the message. He who dies with the most toys wins is it's evidence of the Koth or king of the hill mentality. It's a boys' game. It's played. Little boys play it. Big boys play it. It's a war game because war is the kind of environment, or war is the kind of action that you resort to when somebody has something that you want. So why has the world changed from a war game to now something else? From a scarcity game to what? How about abundant? How about abundant? You're going to have to excuse me because my head's going to turn. I'm still learning about broadcasting, but I have to look something up to read it to you. And I think that's important. So just hold tight. All right, here you go. I want you to listen to this because I think it has bearing on what I consider to be one of the most exciting parts of the time in which we live. And it says, could a new energy era be exciting? The history of human culture can be viewed as the progressive development of new energy sources and their associated conversion technologies. These developments have increased the comfort, longevity, and affluence of humans as well as their numbers. That came from an article called Oil and Culture in the journal Nature. The reason that we have such an exciting future ahead is that we now have unlimited energy resources. Now, okay, we got to do another thing here. And I wrote this thing called the syllogism quite a long time ago. But in the early 1970s, the OPEC countries, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, began to assert ownership of the oil reserves that had been held in their countries, that were held in their countries, that were under their ground, that belonged to them. And they said, wait a second, you guys have been, you're colonists, and this is the classic colonial model. You're taking our resources and sending back very little. So they took it back. And what no one had really taken a moment to look at a snapshot of was how much energy the world was using, how much power, how many hydrocarbons. And yeah, you can get a rough number and the government tries to keep up with it, but they all know that they don't know. And they're just guessing. Now, they're educated guesses. But what they found out resulted after OPEC in the discovery of something called the Iron Law. And the Iron Law, now, it shouldn't have taken scores of PhDs and economists to figure this out. As far as I'm concerned, I could go to a farmer or a rancher, a couple guys I know here, and explain the situation and say, well, what do you think? And I don't know if their languages would be as pretty. Let me read you this. It says, the single most important assumption was the belief in the Iron Law that there was an inevitably and inescapably close relationship between economic growth rates and the growth rates for energy and oil use. In other words, if we got fuel to burn, we're humans. If we got fuel to burn, and once we start to learn how to burn it, you don't take a brand new Lexus into, deepest, darkest Africa and expect somebody to appreciate all its fine points. It's not applicable to them, to their lifestyle, to the way they need to learn. And the arrogance of developing nations is just unparalleled. It's just stupid when we overlook who people are and concentrate on who we think they should be. Well, that's about my first broadcast. I guess I've got a little bit more time though. Do you see my point? My point is that when you have unlimited sunshine, you have unlimited electricity. Let's be specific about one thing. In 1839, a 17-year-old boy named Edmund Becquerel, we'd call him a boy today. We'd treat him like a boy today, but people, particularly the French, don't label people the way we try to do in parts of the developed world. So this 17-year-old scientist, Edmund Becquerel, son of another scientist, also named Edmund Becquerel, took I can't remember what they're called now, took a device out into the sunshine and noticed that the electrical activity or that the molecular activity increased. And in so doing, he discovered the photovoltaic effect. And to this day is credited with that discovery. The interesting thing is, Albert Einstein was the man who, in his miracle year, at the age of 26 in 1905, wrote 4 papers which altered the landscape of physics forever. He won a Nobel Prize. It was awarded in 21. He actually got it in 22, I believe. But he understood that the reason the photoelectric effect occurred was that light came in particles, not waves. And so he explained what happened and why it was happening. Well, in the mid 30s, men like Ford, Edison, Firestone, and many others were discussing this issue of energy. Where are we going to get it? How are we going to get it? Drilling for oil is expensive, dangerous, can be, and it often happens in out-of-the-way places. And as we have seen, it is the property of the host country. And that's what the OPEC oil embargo really proved. This is our oil. Now the question, let me read this to you again. There was an inevitably and inescapably close relationship between economic growth rates and the growth rates for energy and oil use. And I remind you, the history of human culture can be viewed as the progressive development of new energy sources and their associated conversion technologies. These developments have increased the comfort, longevity, and affluence of humans, as well as their numbers. Okay, so we have moved from the purely hydrocarbon era to the solar hydrocarbon era. We can convert sunshine to electricity. We know electricity fuels economic growth, and we can do it everywhere. So my argument in the sustainability channel is that as this is the case, and I can explain it to you quickly, we consume sometime in the last 5 years, 25 terawatt years of measured in electrical, it's measured electrically. So 25 terawatt years was about the global spend or the global buy on energy. The hydrocarbons contributed 80% of that, or 20 terawatt years. Now, the IEA, the International Energy Association, and I understand some of the folks in the oil industry question their numbers and so on and so forth. So, don't believe everything I say. I'm a nobody, but I think this stuff stands to common sense. So the IEA estimates that there are 1,385 terawatt years of hydrocarbons left. That's a certain amount in natural gas, a certain amount in coal and peat, I should imagine, a certain amount in crude. There'll be other numbers, but they'll be small compared to those big three. So they said we had 1,385 terawatt years. Well, 1,385 divided by 20 is less than 70. 70 times 20 is 1,400. So if it doesn't grow, if the global consumption of hydrocarbons doesn't increase, it'll last 70 years. Well, like I'm saying, I'm 70 years old. The Queen lived, her reign was about 70 years. I don't know exactly how long, but something like that. 70 years is a very, very, very short time. And we need to be planning, because the world has provided us with a new opportunity, and that is solar. Now, I've got to take a break here, so I'm going to turn off for a couple minutes, and I'll be back. I don't know much about this broadcasting stuff. I really don't, and I've been trying to learn a voice, and I don't know if anybody is listening or if anybody cares, and that's okay, because I do, and I've learned a great deal through this journey. So if the station or the channel doesn't make it, that's another lesson learned. Thanks. This is Jamie. I'll be back in a second.